Hey there viewers, welcome back to Ray of All Trades. Today we are working on a curb find. 10 horsepower Coleman generator. Not a bad looking unit. This thing actually was caked in so much dirt that I had to power wash it before I even brought it inside. It is a 10 horsepower, 2 120 volt outlets, a 240 volt outlet. It's a 6250 surge watts, probably a 5000 running and a 6250 surge. Motor turns over. Let's check the oil real quick. Oil's a little bit on the low side. It's at the add mark. It does have oil in it though. Could stand to be changed. Choke works. Let's take a peek at the fuel real quick, at the fuel tank. It's got some crusties down inside there, but it's empty. Let's see. Fuel line's extremely rigid. Governor's not stuck. Let's pull the plug out of this thing and see what it looks like. Oh, that's not too bad. A little carboned up, running a little bit rich. Let's check the air filter, make sure Fluffy hasn't moved in and destroyed everything. That's pretty bad. No lights getting through it, and it's looking pretty bad. That would explain why it was running rich. Let's see if this thing even starts. Add a little bit of go-go juice to the cylinder. We'll check and see if she fires and if she has spark. Timing, all that other stuff. One fell swoop. You're on position. Oh yeah, she fires up. Runs actually pretty decent for that little spit that I just heard. I don't know if it generates power yet, and it's bitter cold and snowy outside, so I don't want to put up a nurse tank to it just yet. But even if it doesn't produce power, I mean, a 10 horsepower horizontal motor, I'm sure I could find a use for that. So I tell you what, knowing that the fuel line's rigid, probably deteriorating inside, the fuel tank's got a bunch of trash in it. Let's take a look inside the carburetor, see what it needs, and we're going to put a new fuel line on it, clean out the tank, and make sure this thing runs like it's supposed to, and hopefully it actually produces power. These things are usually pretty simple. They do have brushes on them that are replaceable, so if they do wear out. Just a dirty updraft style carburetor. Not terrible. Breather line's still hooked up. Let's get this thing off of here and on the bench. Let's see. Okay, let's get the breather line off of there. Rotate the carburetor off of the throttle rod. I do not see, I don't know if this one needs it. I don't see a vibration spring on this one. And I don't see a fuel clamp on here either. Okay, let's see. Just a dirty carburetor on the outside anyhow. Get this bowl nut off of here. That was a little bit loose. The passages aren't really plugged. It is kind of dirty. Yeah, the bowl's pretty dirty on the inside. Bowl gasket. Let's get the float. And the needle just fell out. It's good, it wasn't stuck. Let's see, can we get the emulsion tube out of there? This one's plastic. Oh yeah, she popped right out. Let's see. Yeah, the emulsion tube doesn't look terrible. Let's get this idle air jet off of here. Plastic cap. Let's see, try to turn it in first. So this one's bottomed out. Back it out. There we go. Those passages don't look too bad. The one in the middle might be. Can't really tell. This is a style that the needle is all metal, which means that the seat is got a rubber seat inside it. I think this thing needs a bath in the ultrasonic cleaner just to get some of these crusties and everything off of here. Just to get it somewhat cleaned up. I've definitely seen worse, so this one's not terrible, but let's give this thing a bath, and I'll bring you guys back as soon as I have some clean parts. All right, y'all. Ultrasonic cleaner finished up. Let's get these parts finished, or at least clean. Cleaned up all right. Let's see, this is the pilot. There's the bowl nut. I don't know if this is necessarily called a bowl nut because it also serves as a fuel pickup. Okay, and then there's a very small one right there. Make sure that one's cleaned out. Emulsion tube. And then the carburetor. Okay, this part's extremely critical. If you're going to blow air through these passages, this seat right here is going to go flying. All right, if it's a rubber seat, it'll go flying and you'll never find it. So it's important that you only blow air from that direction. All right, and then let's get idle circuit. We'll pass right through the emulsion tube area. That ought to do it. O-ring that's on this emulsion tube has some marks on it, but I don't know that it's that bad. It just basically seals up on this. Let's put our needle back in and our float. All right, let's check it, make sure air flows that way. Air does not flow that way. That verifies that the seat is sealing up. Let's put our bowl gasket back on. And then there's a recess on the bowl. So obviously the float needs to be able to drop further. So that right there goes away. That's on this side basically. Right, so that indentation stays up on this side up here. All right, and then our idle jet. That's it for the carburetor. So we need to get a new fuel line on here and get that tank cleaned out. So let's see if we can figure out a good way to get that tank cleaned out. I don't know, what do y'all think? A little shop vac adapted to a little flexible hose with a wand on the end. Think that'll do it? Let's give it a try. You know what they say, where there's a will. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I think we can let that go. All right, let me get a piece of 1/4 inch fuel line and at least one clamp. So they used a hose clamp here. Let's get this out. I'm not going to be reusing that. And very gently get this loose. Tell you what, we are going to cut that. My fear is that I'm going to hurt this grommet up here, and I don't want to hurt that. It's already spinning fairly easily. And I think I need a new one, a new grommet. And right now, I can't get any delivered. Let's make sure that that passage is not plugged up. Yeah, it passes through okay. All right, let's measure out a new piece of line. Looks like right about there. If you change a lot of these lines, do yourself a favor and buy it on a big spool. It's a lot cheaper that way. Okay, preload my clamps. One there and one down here. Yeah, that grommet turns real easy. I got a feeling it's gonna leak. One there. And we've got the one for the carburetor down here. What do y'all think? Just give it a try? Yep, I agree with you. Let's give it a try. I mean, if I know if I've got any extra parts I'm going to need, I can go ahead and get them all ordered at the same time. Let's get that stabbed in. Get my breather line hooked back up. This gasket here looked decent, and then the mating surface here looked decent. If you suspect that you're going to have a leak, it wouldn't be a bad idea to change that gasket or to put some fuel resistant gasket RTV on there. And I may end up going back and doing that. Because just because the gasket looks fine doesn't mean that it is fine. But what I'm going to do is, while it's running, I'm going to spray some a little bit of carb clean right down here, making sure that I don't get in contact with this because it is flammable, and see if it changes my RPMs around this gasket, and that would tell me that it's leaking. If you're gonna do that to verify for leaks, just be real cautious, because one spark out of this thing on an open flammable liquid that's spraying in this direction will cause for a really bad day. It will cause a fire or worse. Well, that's on there good and snug. I think I would like to change the oil. Which one's easiest to get to? Looks like this one. Yeah, it's mostly stable. I think we can hit the bucket without making a big mess. Yeah, that'll work. You let that thing sit and drain for a little bit. I'm going to look and see if I have one of those air filters, because there is no way this thing's going to run with the air filter that we just had in this thing. What do you think? It says it holds about 1 5/8 quarts, I believe. So we're going to start with 1 quart and check it and see, because it was hard to tell exactly what the oil capacity was, because I guess there was several motors for this exact generator. All right, we'll start off with 1 quart. This one looks like it was 1 quart was too much. Yeah, 1 quart brought me all the way up to the line that says do not overfill. Alright, well, we're going to get some of this bag out of here, I guess. Check that level real quick. Still a little overfull. Not much though. There we go, right on the button. Okay. I was gonna say, I don't think a single one of the engines specified less than a quart. Every one of them was somewhere between 1.1 and 2 quarts. So unless that dipstick is not the right one for this machine, which I doubt that it's I doubt that it's a wrong dipstick. Like I said, I was scared of this gasket leaking right here. So let's just put just a little bit of gasoline in this thing and see if it does leak before I go filling it up. Got a little bit of a drink in there. Yep, that grommet is covered. Give it about 15-20 minutes and see if we come back to a wet area up here. That'll tell me if I need to change out that gasket or not. Alright, so it's been about 20 minutes or so. I did add a couple more gallons of gas to it, and I do not see anything leaking. So nothing out of the carburetor, nothing out of the grommet up here, nothing out of the new fuel line. I think what we should do is move this thing closer to the door, plug something in to make sure that it produces power, fire it up, let it sit for about a minute or two. If it does, go ahead and shut it down and order an air filter for this thing. Let's see, the fuel's already in the on position. Let's move choke over to full choke. The on button is in the on position. She fires up. Well, yes to producing power. She didn't run all that smooth. I think I would like to get an air filter on it first. And then I think we might actually have to adjust the valves in this thing. It seemed like it was spitting back out of the carburetor a little bit. Let's get it back up on the bench. And I wanted, before I start diving in any further, I want to get an air filter for this thing. So I'll meet you guys back as soon as I have an air filter for it, and then we'll finish diagnosing it, make it run right. Fast forward, it's about 3 days later. I found an air filter, ordered it online. I got some snow and it kind of kept me local, and a lot of stores and stuff like that closed. But yeah, it's Virginia. We, closed down at the slightest bit of snow. It depends on the area, right? But when I was looking, within about 4 hours after I shut this thing off, I started having gasoline dripping from the carburetor, and I said, well, that seat is probably shot. So I started looking for a seat, needle and seat combination for this thing, for this Tecumseh, and I smelled more and more gas. So I went up, shut off the shutoff valve up here. What I noticed, even after I shut it off, I still had a little bit of a smell of gas, and I'm seeing that I'm actually leaking some gas from that grommet that I was concerned about. So I ordered the air filter, the grommets, and everything else. But when I was looking at the air filter, I saw that they had a knockoff carburetor, and it was a whole lot cheaper than just buying the needle and seat kit, and it was also going to show up faster. So I started looking at it, and it looked so close. I mean, it looks like the identical carburetor. Y'all have heard me say it before. You can take the parts out of these things and change them over quite often, and it'll work. You know what I mean? It'll actually just work just fine. So the idea was I was going to buy this. I was going to steal the parts that I wanted off of it, put them in if it didn't work, and just take the parts and rebuild that with these parts, because the parts I was going to get was probably going to be aftermarket parts anyhow. While I was in the process of doing that, pulled the cover off and everything else, like I said, I discovered that leak up there, and then I noticed that the governor arm, which I swear this was moving freely a few days ago, is stuck pretty bad. So I don't know that it was if this happened over time or whatever, but I can tell you that governor arm, the throttle arm that's connected up to the governor, is sticking pretty bad. So rather than trying to rebuild this one again with these parts, I think I'm just going to go ahead and put this one on. My biggest concern is where the throttle arm connects over to here, and I know that you can pull out this screw and you can swap this throttle plate, throttle arm, so that it matches up perfectly. but that's actually what's sticking on this one. So I don't know if it's the bushing that's right here or the throttle arm needs to be cleaned or whatever the case. But before I go through all that trouble, knowing that I see gasoline coming out of this carburetor, I smell it, I have gasoline coming out of that grommet up there, I think I'm going to go ahead and just shut off this fuel again. Let's shut off the fuel supply and grab a micrometer real quick and find out which hole this needs to line up with. That would make it the same. Once we've got that, let's go ahead and put this carburetor on and see if it works. If it doesn't work, then we'll go ahead and try to take this one completely apart and then use the pieces off of it. But since I've got multiple problems with this carburetor already, let's just go ahead and try this aftermarket one and see how well it works. It is not a name brand that I've ever heard of before, and if it works well, I'll link it in the description. Let's give this thing a try. First thing I want to do though is get that grommet changed out. Luckily, I only put a little bit of gasoline inside this thing. I'm going to tilt it back so that all the gas is away from this. Actually, I'll probably tilt it this direction. So all the gas is away from the grommet. Let's get that grommet swapped out, and we'll put this kit. It came with quite a few things. I mean, it came with the carburetor that was really close. Came with a filter, shut-off valve, you know, just the normal stuff. Aftermarket spark plug. It did come with a brand new gasket. I'm actually kind of happy about that because I would like to change that if I can. Like I said before, as far as sealing it up. So we'll change that out too. But for the cost of the, well, a few dollars more than just the air filter, I was able to get all these pieces. So let's see if we can make this thing work on a budget. So I want to tilt it up enough so that I don't see gasoline over the top of that pickup anymore. Let's see if this is enough. Yeah, that did it. There's just a little bit of fuel up inside that thing because there's a recess inside that, you know, where all that trash was collected. There's a little bit of a recess right there. So I've got some brand new grommets and shutoff valves because I was ordering these because I needed them for another generator that's almost identical to this one, that this grommet was shot. I was able to pick up a brand new grommet and fuel shut off, and I was able to get a 3-pack of them. Again, super cheap. Let's take off the fuel line. I got my pig mat handy here, so if when I start dropping fuel, I can absorb it pretty quick. Then we want to pull this shutoff valve outside of the grommet, and the grommet's actually going to be extremely stiff, which is why it's leaking to begin with. So the shutoff valve is still working. So we're going to put that shutoff valve inside our parts bin. But this grommet was extremely tight, whereas this one, super easy, you know, supple, I guess. Yeah, this one's actually kind of rough. Normal. I mean, it's a wear item, right? Just wipe off that area. Make sure there's no jagged edges on this thing. No, it feels pretty good. Goes in there nice and easy. Yeah. By the way, this barb is what keeps it in place, and the width of this is enough to expand that rubber so that it doesn't have as much play in here. just like that. Yep, and it's nice and stiff now. It doesn't spin around in circles as easy as the other one did. I'll go ahead and leave the valve in the off position. Looks like that nut might be loose too. Let's go ahead and snug that up. That packing nut that's on there. All right. So we'll leave it in the off position for right now. If yours is leaking, I mean, you see how easy it is to swap and super cheap. I've seen people just say, oh, it's only dripping a little bit. Well, that gasoline's dripping right on top of an electric motor. It's bad combination, right? It's so easy to change. Just, you know, run the fuel as low as possible, tilt it up into place, and you see how easy that thing is to swap. Like I said, I've seen people try to put silicone and try to melt it and put cups here to try to catch the fuel. It's an electric motor. I mean, it's going to spark. So one little spark could make for a really bad day. All right, let's see what we're looking at here. What I want to measure is to the center of that hole, because I'm not sure if I'm going to put that plastic plug back in or not. But I'm going to go from the center of that throttle rod to the center of the throttle shaft and lock that measurement down. Looks like it should be that one right there. So in the throttle completely open position, is that open? No, it's closed. So throttle completely closed position, more at a 45-degree angle, is that one right there. So we're going to try to use that one. And then when the throttle is completely open in that position, it looks like it should be just behind that throttle shaft. And again, you know, I mean, obviously the distance is already good, but I'm just using this as a pointer. But here's the throttle shaft, and then it's basically just behind this parallel plane, I guess you want to call it. So parallel plane there, and it's just behind. Go ahead and pull this off. Okay, let's verify. Yeah, it's not my governor that's hung up. It's that, well, the throttle rod's moving pretty well right now. Kind of curious if maybe it was this plastic. It might have been getting hung up. And if it was the plastic, that means that it was doing that when we tried it the first time. Let's just get that pulled off of there. Yeah, that moves very easily. Of course, now that one's moving very easily. Yeah, we're gonna try it anyhow. I think I'm gonna leave that plastic bushing off of there. Let's find out what size we need to drill this. Inches, 0. Lock it in place to get the exact measurement of that. .094. So I'm guessing a 0.1 inch. I gotta do some math in my head and find out which size drill bit I want to use for drilling out that hole. All right, I cheated. I didn't do math. What I did was I just grabbed a 1/8 drill bit just to see what it measures, and it's 0.12. We're just going to use that. I'm already committed. I'm not returning this carburetor, so whether it's a ends up being a complete dud or not, because like I said, it was literally only a couple of bucks difference between the air filter alone and adding a carburetor to it. How does that fit? Drops right on there. All right. I'm still not convinced that I don't have to do a valve adjustment on this thing. I really don't want to, because it's behind here, which means I have to take off this governor return spring, which is how you set your RPMs. Then I also have to pull off these two screws. Then, because it's a flathead design, I actually have to pull off the head and I would have to pull off the head and replace the head gasket and all that other stuff just to get a good measurement there. Man, this needs to come out. We're going to be taking off this cover. There's a lot of plastic inside there. Okay. Well, new gasket. Let's get the throttle linkage back on. Before I get it all the way tightened up, let me make sure I can get that fuel line put on there. Should have done that while it was in make this easy on myself. Let's tap that in place. There we go. Yeah, the head on that side must have just been boogered up a little bit. Because the other side fit with no problem. If I put this on, am I going to hurt myself with getting that cover off of there? Nah, I don't think so. It's not really in the way. Because I got to pull this air shroud off of here. That should be enough. Ground wire disconnected there, and I've got another ground wire right up in here connecting to that switch. Yeah, that's not healthy for an air-cooled engine, is it? Did not expect that one. Might have had a little bit of smell once this thing warmed up, huh? Yeah, this is going to take a while. I'll bring you back as soon as I have some progress made. That took entirely too long. Yeah, with a pick, a couple of wire brushes, a good set of pliers, knife, scraper, compressed air, I was finally able to get majority of it off of there. Get the shroud put back on. The coil appears to be gapped properly. So this is if you had a starter, electric starter, this is where that would go. So we want to make sure that this tab goes right back onto this spot right back here. And the two wires that I disconnected, one of them, they go to this switch right here. This wire here went to that one, and then this wire here went to that lug right there. Go ahead and snug those down, and then I'm going to fix that starter cover. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but the spark plug wire, you also had to put it into the groove there. The reason why that cover is important is directing the airflow, right? You need, like I mentioned before, it's an air-cooled engine. So the shroud, these covers, all that stuff's important to keep that air going across that cylinder head and the cylinder itself to keep the engine cool. Okay, let's turn on the fuel. Make sure we don't have any fresh leaks. Make sure the carburetor doesn't start leaking. Governor works like it's supposed to now. Except the choke arm got bent somewhere along the way. Not sure if you guys are aware, this right here, that adjustment screw right there, that's your fine tuning. Look for, more importantly than voltage, in my opinion, more importantly than voltage is having the right frequency. You want 60 hertz because a lot of stuff relies on that 60 hertz signal to keep it in time. Generally without a load, I usually keep it about 62 hertz, something like that. Once it has a load, I'll let it drop to about 59 hertz, something along those lines. But you would tighten this right here to increase RPMs. The RPMs are what's giving you your frequency and also usually giving you, your higher voltage. And then of course, turning it back out, loosening it, will let that drop. If you're measuring, let's say 110 volts and 55 hertz, tighten that up a little bit until you get to, your desired frequency and voltage that you're looking for. All right, take your bets. Y'all think that that's it? Or do you think I'm gonna have to pull the head on this thing and adjust those valves? I don't know, let's find out. So before I put the cover back on, we're going to set this thing up next to the garage door, fire it up, and let's see what it does. All right, y'all, let's see what we get. Let's put the meter on volts AC. I've got I think it's a 1,000 watt heater sitting close by. Choke is in the on position. Run position. Let's see what we get. Let me go half choke. So I'm going to say that that's actually running pretty good. I didn't strip off the load first, which honestly the only way to do that is to unplug everything. Let's just see how it restarts. Obviously the choke's sitting wide open right now. It runs a little bit high without a load on it, but as soon as I put any kind of a load on this thing, it pulls right back down exactly, nice clean power. I think we're going to call this one a win. I don't know that this one's got a variable voltage regulator on it, and I don't know that that would necessarily help us in this scenario, but she's definitely running good. Starts easy. So hope y'all got something out of the video. Really appreciate you watching, and I will catch you guys on the next one.